Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this first episode of a new content series focusing on the developments in the world of Internet of Things, brought to you by IoT Asia Connect in collaboration with Singapore Industrial Automation Association. So in this and the following episodes, we aim to bring you, our audiences, insights and opportunities to network through webinar-style discussions, conversations with invited speakers, occasional shared articles, and other content-led activities to stir collaborations. My name is Jane, and I'm glad to introduce Mr. James Wei, Executive Director of SingEx Exhibitions, to say a few introductory remarks. Over to you, James.
Thanks, Jane. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first IoT Asia Connect Series, a web engagement series co-organized by SingEx and Singapore Industrial Automation Association, SIAA. 2020 is not the year we have expected. All of us have had to recalibrate the way we work to address immediate issues while building for the longer-term solutions. The environment in which we work, play, learn, and shop has changed drastically. And I'm sure your business needs have also evolved as you adapt to the new operating environment. The IoT Asia Connect series aims to address these shifts by discussing today's challenges and solutions for a sustainable future across the sectors of connected real estate, connected transport and logistics, and connected end users through cross-sectorial learning and sharing and co-curation of solutions to address industry challenges. Now, we have already seen major shifts arising from convergence of technologies, bringing different capabilities into one ecosystem for the design and planning of enhanced products and services for a post-COVID world. The new refreshed focus of IoT Asia Plus, which will be held from 24th to 25th March 2021, will address these shifts and new demands in the IoT ecosystem, focusing on application-driven solutions, innovative showcases, and encouraging collaboration and solution for business transformation. With this, I'd like to welcome Terence Teo, President of SIAA, to tell us more. Over to you, Terence.
Thank you, James. And good morning, distinguished audience, guest speakers, panelists, and industry friends. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for spending your time in joining this IoT Asia Connect Series e-conference. As most of us is aware that from the onset of end December 2019, and especially for the last 6 to 7 months, the world is disrupted with the presence of COVID-19 pandemic. Businesses, economies, and daily life are affected. This is evident from current practice like work from home, temperature screening, safe entry, contact tracing, quarantine orders, stay home notice, and the regular swab tests for our frontline workers, and also the physical distancing and so on. The built environment is adapting practices in order to make the building safe for businesses and workers to operate in. Internet of Things primed itself as a core technology enabler during this period. It is by the IoT discipline that we innovate new and essential, such as contactless and tracking solutions that eases the spread of COVID-19. For example, automated IoT temperature screening systems in building that reduces physical contacts, which reduce the risk of exposure to the virus. The industry is realizing the use of IoT to assist and adapt the new norm. With this, today the theme of the inaugural IoT Asia Connect series is From Recovery to Resilience with IoT. How should the building and property sectors adapt? We have invited experts to exchange opinions on various issues and corresponding solution. This is with the objective of passing on knowledge to friends of the industries on first degree concern, best practices, and possible solution. IoT technology will grow in importance in sustaining the new norm. I'm also delighted to introduce IoT Asia Plus, a revamped IoT Asia adapted to today's industry's need. For long-term survival, business owners and decision makers need to quickly transform themselves to be in line with the low-touch economy to continue to sustain and grow once the impact slows down and the economy to start to go on a recovery pace. We are very confident that though recovery may be steep, but a lot of businesses need to be able to position themselves to the new norm so that they are able to operate safely and persevere to success. Let me take this opportunity to share how SIAA, as the show organizer, co-developed with SingEx to start IoT Asia back in 2014 and have progressed through the past 5 editions of IoT Asia. Since last year, the team had went into fast mode to look at IoT Asia transformation for 2020 and beyond. This had led to many rounds of early breakfast discussion and brainstorming by the organizing committee from SIAA and our partners SingEx, traveling through many different cafes across the island. And now I'll do some advertisements for our F&B guys. I mean, we actually traveled from SingEx office, the Coffee Bean Cafe, to the Hans in Bukit Merah, to Wang Cafe in Marina Bay area, and also Burger King in Marina Center, Swenson in Plaza Sing, and lastly, Buddy Hoagies in East Point. The team had curated the IoT Asia Plus transformation, and we are honored to bring to all to the launch of our Connect Series e-conference, starting from the Connect Smart Real Estate and Energy. The original IoT Asia, which had won many awards, including the Best Trade Conference Organizers of the Year 2014 Singapore, the only finalist from Asia for the 2015 IoT Post-Trade Award, and the prestigious UFI Marketing Award for Brands in 2016. And we had been very successful in focusing and educating the industries on what IoT is and how it can be applied. During then, we had attracted many industries practitioners to the conference and exhibitions. And last year, we saw a good turnout of more than 6,000 delegates to the event. SIAA had decided that for sustaining the IoT Asia, we need to transform the event. And as such, we had already mapped up a paradigm shift for IoT Asia Plus Connect Series. And for this year and next year, we will focus on the 3 parts of IoT, namely things, connectivity, and services across 3 industry sectors where adoption is surging strongly. With the combination of development and interest level in AR, and blockchain, which will make it easier for the paradigm shift for IoT Asia. As a beginning, we had currently identified 3 vertical segments: the connected smart estates building management, the connected end user, and finally the connected transport and logistics. We will be focusing on the event initiative and building blocks on these 3 segments. Next slide, please. The road to transformation from SIAA view is very simple. As an industrial automation association, we are tasked to help our members to create a marketplace in the area of IoT and industrial transformation. We just need to create values for our members, leveraging on IoT Asia Plus platform to develop a marketplace to build up the ecosystems for partners, solution providers, system integrators, device manufacturers, platform providers, ISPs, IoT components manufacturers, and distributors to come together. We want to initiate collaboration and co-create the ecosystems to form alliances and develop solutions to tackle the pain point of the 3 identified vertical segments, to develop and create technologies that help to improve productivity, adopting communication protocols such as 5G that is coming, that seamlessly link the application, drive adoption, and make profit for everyone in these ecosystems. We need to drive close collaboration within this value chain and to create partnership. From here, we can see the new value proposition for IoT Asia 2.0 is to drive product focus to a service focused model, and finally to a platform thinking focused strategy. Once you are at the platform service level, everything became as platform as a service. And from there, money will just trickle in consistently, so long as the ecosystem is not disrupted or derailed until the next round of industrial revolution, which, I mean, who knows, maybe 15 years from now. Next slide, please. Today, I would like to share how SIAA had managed to brought about the IoT Asia transformation with this enterprise IoT architecture. We had segmentized this architecture into 3 different verticals, from the use case to the industry enablers and the technology enablers. On the horizontal ecosystems perspective, we had the successful use cases for the 3 industries vertical segments of connected users, connected transports and logistics, and connected real estate and energy. The end result of our transformation is to bring collaborators, solution providers and manufacturers, as well as supply chain and the users to co-create and come together as an ecosystems enabler. The ecosystems enabler will be able to bring about industry associations, drive the initial IoT POC projects from a test bedding level to mass deployment and scale it further to a smart nation level. There will be open innovation as the players comes together to share technologies, business model, and domain knowledge. Platform partners get the opportunities to do cross-business data exchange, co-creation services, reference architecture, and even ICT solution enhancement from edge to cloud security. And also some of these industry standards for IoT solution may eventually evolve from the ecosystems when it become mature. This completes our transformation strategy and my appreciation for your attention. And I would like to thank our co-partners, the team from SingEx, for working agile to launch this IoT Asia Plus Connect e-conference within a very tight schedule. Following today's event, we will have another 2 series of the e-conference covering the remaining 2 market segments of connected transport and logistics and connected end user. The IoT Asia Plus Showcase and Conference will come alive on March 24th and 25th next year at Singapore Expo and Max Atria. We look forward to hosting all of you then. Do mark your calendar for this date, March 24-25, 2021. Now I will hand over to our SingEx host to continue with the show, and I would like to wish everyone a great learning experience at IoT Asia Plus Connect Series. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Terence. And now to proceed with our program, I'm glad to introduce our moderator and panelists for a discussion on the topic From Recovery to Resilience with IoT, How Should the Building and Property Sector Adapt? So our moderator is Glenn Tan, Group Managing Partner of FT Consulting, a seasoned practitioner who has led organizational turnarounds, transformation, and change management internationally for over 2 decades. Our panelists are Alvin Ng, Vice President for Digital Solutions Asia Pacific at Johnson Controls, where he heads up the digital growth strategy in APAC, including executing initiatives for market penetration, providing relevant digital solutions in the building sector, focusing on partner offerings and ecosystem representation. Next, we have Chung Ha Nguyen, Director of Operations at Riversys Asia, a system integrator that provides automation and information solutions to clients worldwide. An automation engineer by trade, Chung Ha has over 10 years experience in designing, developing, and implementing control and information systems for clients in multiple industries. Next up, we have Steve Perkins, Becker Technical Fellow and Senior Technical Director at Becker Singapore. He heads Becker's Smart Buildings Technology team and works on projects across APAC, implementing next-gen digital technology solutions on building projects. He is the M&E Engineering Director for Capital Spring, the office tower that incorporates a wide range of smart building technologies. And he's also QP for the Punggol Digital District, the manifestation of Singapore's smart nation's ambitions amongst other notable projects. Also with us is Theo Sherman, Chief Strategy Officer for APAC at Hitachi Asia, where he provides thought leadership in key industry segments, defines solution roadmaps aligned to those industries, research and develop strategies to enable Hitachi to use its knowledge and innovation to transform outcomes for governments, partners, and clients. And finally, we have Zach Wilson, Managing Director of Alpha Tech. He brings over 15 years experience in engineering, construction, and real estate development, specializing in clean tech, renewable energy, energy efficiency, and high-tech projects. He's adept at project execution in emerging markets and has numerous other real estate projects under his belt around the world. He's also a lead accredited professional, as well as member of the Coronet Global and the Urban Land Institute. So before we get started, we'd like to run a quick audience poll to gauge their sentiments on a few questions. So there are, I think, 9 questions. Yeah, so please do scroll down to the scroll bar at the side. Okay, we'll take a look at the responses later, as they could be helpful for the audience, for our speakers to have in mind when they get into the discussions later. This will be a bit of context for them. Okay, so while we have the audience work on that, by the way, when you're done, please click submit, and then the window will disappear. Okay, so while we have you work on the poll, let me set up the context for the discussion. We know now that the pandemic has disrupted a lot of things, including operations in the property, building, and construction sectors, and also how we as individuals interact with buildings and the built environment. So depending on where you are in this space, you may think that commercial property assets are sunk, or that this is a time of opportunity for the building and property sector to adjust and build capabilities for future resilience. So let's hear what our panel has to say on this. All right, so over to you, Glenn.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jane. And firstly, good morning to everyone. I just wanted to set a bit of context before we start. Having looked through the list of members in the audience, we've got people from 15 countries, that ranges all the way from the East, Japan and China, through to the Middle East. You've got people from Israel, people from Pakistan as well, and then all the way obviously to the US. And of course, people in multiple industries, ranging from obviously developers to landlords to telcos to consulting groups and so on and so forth. And why the importance of that context? Because as we speak to solutions, just wanted to factor in the recommendations or even the challenges that are associated with people from the East to the West, developing markets, because we all know that in developing markets, a lot of that challenges lies beyond the solution, right? The infrastructure, leadership, so on and so forth. So as much as we share this, just wanted to set that context that it's not so much a Singapore-only type of focus, but more a broader regional context. And so with that in mind, I wanted to set that framework from this perspective. You've got the entire value chain of what it is within the property real estate segment, whether you're an end user, you're a landlord, developer, along that lines. And then subsequently, we try to see if we can move into beyond a building, right? We typically start off with focusing within a building. And I know some of our panelists have actually been involved. For example, Steve in the Punggol Digital District, it starts to get into a community township type of setting. And why is this important? Because as an audience, by all means, shoot questions from that standpoint, and then the discussion becomes a lot more fruitful. And along the way, if you feel you need to ask a question or chime in, by all means, do that. Okay, so I'll kick it off here. First, just to highlight what James and Terence have mentioned, right? This whole entire event is for us to sit down and think through a little bit, what does it mean for us to accelerate a lot of what we do, right? From resistance to resilience, right? So I'm just going to throw one quick question to the panelists and say, hey, having been in your sphere of work, do you see any of the things that you were talking about or you were working on that maybe wasn't moving as fast, and then suddenly because of this, it has accelerated? I'm just going to throw it out to the panel for a start, yeah? Anyone?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have seen, for the last 5 years, we've seen a global paradigm shift economy-wise to a consumption or consumer-led economy. What COVID's done is just highlighted that and put a spotlight on that. And in the property arena, we now, traditionally we looked at property and what, building it and getting returns out of that, the physical ecosystem. Now suddenly the focus is about the people inside and how important that is to not sustainability, but also new net revenues for that ecosystem. So yeah, so it's just been acceleration of that whole paradigm shift that's been happening for a long time.
Thanks a lot. Do anyone wanted to share specifically in your area, any specific things that you were trying to push through, either with your business partners or your clients, and because of this, they are the ones pulling you rather than you pushing?
Yeah, so I will jump in, Glenn.
Sure.
So what's interesting, right? I think a lot of customers are now also defining what resilience means to them. And the way we think about it, a lot of our customers is resilience equates sustainability, safety, security, wellness, and experience, and in the built environment, right? The way we kind of narrow our focus around the built environment. And the word sustainability, the word safety, security, and wellness or experience is no longer a nice to have, it's a must have now. So the question you have is, what has this situation drive is, everyone is turning around and say, it's no longer just an ROI discussion of whether do we need to implement certain set of technology, certain set of solutions or digital. It is now more of how do I mitigate the risk? How do I protect my employee health and safety? This is becoming more and more important. So the built environment is becoming critical in ensuring that resilience factor of sustainability, safety, security, and wellness and experience becomes key and core to the way they operate their business.
Thanks a lot, Alvin. And I'm just going to draw on a point that you made around this whole safety and security. And this time I'm going to use a very specific Singapore example. Zach, I'm going to direct it to you because I know you're front and center in the midst of managing your workforce. In the midst of all that's happening with the government clamping down, on the foreign worker dormitories, through to how do you navigate that through, and then ultimately, making sure that your workers end up in the place where work gets done. But then at the same time, how do you manage that, throughout this entire journey?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely are responding to a dynamic environment with high frequency changes, right? So it's very challenging. We made a company policy decision that we will no longer house our foreign workers in dormitories. So we just made that decision, and we get a lot of financial pushback on that. But if we can't humanely and in a dignified way take care of the people who are out there on the front lines, then I think we need to find another business. So we had to lean into that decision financially, but it's just something we had to do. To another point, kind of back to your, what are our customers sort of, maybe something we talked about previously, but then it gets pushed on you. So we participate in the very complex supply chains for different industries, whether it be semiconductor or, advanced manufacturing. And the maturing of their supply chain. So it's, it used to be all China all day long. Now they're realizing, wow, it'd be really great if we had diversity in our supply chain so that when China gets whacked with a virus, it became a global problem. So everyone kind of fell down at the same time. But I think there was a real emphasis. I mean, Q1 board meetings were a lot about diversification of supply chain. So moving companies to Vietnam, to Malaysia, to Indonesia, and having, a quarter of each, or a certain percentage of their supply chain coming from various regions was something that we saw. And I think IoT can help manage that as well, because you're able to get the remote eyes and you can be able to get remote dashboards and be able to manage a more complex and more mature supply chain, but do it in a way that is metrics based. So just wanted to talk about both points.
Appreciate that. And I think, Zach, I wanted to lead your point into Trung. Trung, I know you do a lot of system integration work. How does that remote monitoring, remote decision-making, and remote solutioning come into play in a use case situation, given what has been described, by the prior speakers? Anything you wanted to share from your personal experience?
Just exactly what Zach said. We see a big shift manufacturing investment out from China to Southeast Asia, to be particular, where we as a company serving. And we see a lot of that right now. Back to your question just now, when you say you have anything, to that we try to push and it's not successful, but due to COVID, they come back and say, hey, I want this, I want remote diagnostic, even some technology that we see a lot now today, a lot of company advertising, but doesn't gain a lot of traction, was augmented reality, for example. And it's really sexy, it's nice to have, but it's not a must-have in people list for a while until the COVID-19 hit. And then we suddenly see a surge of people come back and asking for, hey, last month I saw you introduce a remote diagnostic tool or remote working software, can we implement it now? Can we implement it within next 30 days? So in that aspect, we do see in the short term a surge in the demand for remote support, and also a lot of digital internet initiative in our client get accelerated and intensified. So so that's from our personal experience.
Okay, now thanks, Trung. Steve, I wanted you to share a little bit about more from a community ecosystem standpoint in regard to IoT. Could you share your thoughts? Because a lot of this situation would just probably accelerate a lot of what you've been working on, for example, with a digital district as an example.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So what the conversations we're having a lot now is especially around IoT, is getting more data to understand what is actually happening, right? The nature of work is changing, the nature of how people are using commercial facilities and retail is changing. And so clients are trying to understand, saying things were already changing with co-working, with agile workplaces, retail changing and going online. Now I've got work from home and people being reticent about going into buildings. What is actually happening? And so they definitely want to have more data to understand how people are utilizing their facilities so they can make some evidence-based decisions about how they operate. Do I have too many people? Do I need more space? And so there's all those conversations about give me data so I really understand what's happening, because things are so different now I can't predict without some data.
So Steve, who have you found who's actually willing to pay for that?
So we've found a number of commercial building operators before, when we talked about smart lighting before, and using smart lighting for occupancy data. People were somewhat reticent, but I think now a lot more people are saying, yeah, look, I think we'll find core customers that want that data. The co-working business explosion, that sort of data is really valuable to them, because how many people I have in the building is changing all the time. And so there's enough types of tenant now that we see a lot of developers saying, look, I can see maybe 20% of my office floors I should have IoT-enabled light fittings and people counters, because tenants will pay some tenants have the nature of their work is they'll pay a premium for that data.
Okay, no, thanks a lot for that.
A big shift that we have seen in the industry is, traditionally a lot of these discussions used to happen at a procurement level, right? Now suddenly the C-level suites are involved in these discussions, because it's not just, how do we make this better, but how do we survive and how do we really transform our companies? Now that opens up a big opportunity to accelerate transformation, because once you engage on a C level, you now start to talk about long-term future and how you can really help transform those companies. So I think that's been a very positive shift. And then that follows on from there, then saying, for us to try and get onto that journey or outcome by ourselves is difficult. Can we partner? And that's the exciting thing for us, is that we can now start building longer-term relationships at a C level to help transform organizations.
I think that's a beautiful point, Theo, because that's where it always breaks down, right? If you actually have a champion that's going to drive the decision, and you're not going to get a spanner in the works at some mid-level facility management guy or some procurement level, then we can actually get some IoT put in place. So, yeah.
No, absolutely. It needs to be led from the top, and that is, as everyone has just said, there's this understanding now of, crikey, we don't have data sets to make decisions to understand what's going on. Let's put this on the agenda for our teams, and that's certainly helping with traction.
Absolutely.
I think data has, as well. I think, thinking what Steve, you said, and what Theo said around consumption economy, data and technology has come to a level that it's actually affordable, right? And if you think about the world of Google Map, in previously it gets you from point A to point B, Google Map now has an ability to ingest weather intelligence, traffic intelligence, and retail intelligence, and give that power to an individual to make that real-time decision of where he wants to go from point A to point B, depending on what's happening with data, right?
Yeah.
About this in a built environment, right? And now that you have an ability to ingest weather intelligence, you have the ability to ingest spatial intelligence and building environmental and security, suddenly that middle point, the intersection point of all these becomes powerful in terms of new and different value that we can create. So, really aligned with what Theo said earlier, that CXOs are looking at that because they are beginning to realize that from a consumer world, they now can see the power of data and how data is coming together, the mesh of data, create new and different value. And that's the unlocking of the, the potential of the value of data that everybody is waking up to now, and especially heightened by post-COVID, right?
Now, as you mentioned about data, right, and it's very interesting that, but there are two themes that came about just now as you spoke. One, the theme on the importance of leadership, and number two, the theme on the importance of data set. I want to add another theme here. Actually, thanks to John. John, you asked a question, and it's, yep, we know all this, but you know what? I've got a talent challenge, right? I've got a lot of data. People don't know how to use it. They end up, instead of giving me insightful decision-making, outcome focused type of data, I end up getting a bunch of data and I don't know what to do with it. Any thoughts on that?
Well, sorry, just do a quick one. Whenever we engage with a customer and we work in the built environment, we also sell IoT devices, Enlighted, Urban IO, and a bunch of others. We always say, if the customer is not sophisticated enough to understand their own problem statement, then we're going to have a real tough time delivering, solutions that are going to be good for them. So I think part of it is it's a little bit of a meet in the middle. We need a customer who's sophisticated enough to understand, and it doesn't have to be a fully developed concept. It just has to be, we're really struggling with this. We'd really like to get some data insights. Do you have a product or a service that can help us? So define that statement in a clear, succinct way so that we can do our job. And I think Theo and probably Steve would say the same thing. It's if you don't know what you need, if we don't know whether we're buying ice cream or we're buying a Holstein Hereford, it's hard to understand what we're trying to sell.
Yeah, absolutely agree with Zach. And the key there, at the end of the day, data means nothing without an outcome, right? So it's still the old what outcome do we need? Does this client need to solve? Where do they need to get to? And how can we then utilize an integrated ecosystem with data to get them there? And I think that's the key, and help them build a pathway or show them a pathway to get there, and then help them transform through that process.
Right. Now, given the environment that we're in, if I use it within the ASEAN context, for example, John, thanks to your question as well, yeah. With many actually not having the ability to even get into proper education system, right? Into a proper education system, how do you practically approach a situation like this? For example, right, if I say if everybody's moving into Vietnam, for example, manufacturing, and obviously we need to use data, but you know what, you're going to use Vietnamese workforce. And my dear friends, I've got all the bells and whistles that I used to have in China. I'm going to bring it over there, but you know what, the guys can't do it. Any specific practical approach to how you would upgrade or improve the skill set of that talent to be able to use the data intelligently, so to speak?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So the key from us, education is that was the second key thing that I think that was highlighted for us workforce-wise. Hitachi is unique in the sense we have more than 800 companies inside Hitachi globally. And then in the region, we have 187 companies that we deal with, right? So across all these countries. So the key for us, employees and people are key, but education is and retooling our people are key. And we all know when you talk about transformation, it's not just operational, product and client, but it's absolutely how do I augment my staff and how do I staff grow with me? Research shows us there's no way that you can keep on getting new talent in to help you transform. You have to put a program in to augment or retool your workforce. So I think that's so the vision, once again, leadership becomes key, and then putting systems in place. And then there's a lot of tools like augmented reality and so forth that can accelerate that, which means your skill set does not have to be that focused, because augmented reality can help you get there, but it's still education, training, very, very, very important.
Okay, no, thanks a lot for that, Theo. I wanted to jump back to an earlier point around supply chain. I think, Zach, you mentioned that. And there was a question around the fact that, as people diversify out from one country to another because of COVID and you want to make sure your supply chain is a bit more resilient, can any one of you share a little bit about some of the IoT solutions that help with this supply chain related type of monitoring? Because you move your business from one place to another, it doesn't discount the fact that you still have to face the same challenges related to that COVID situation in that market, and therefore the whole safe distancing, lockdown and stuff like that would still be there. Any specific use case you want to share around that space? Anyone?
I don't know if it's a use case issue as much as people understand now that they need a diversity of options. Do you know what I mean? Before we all like, we'll find one vendor or one supplier and they're great and we'll work with them. Now we understand there's these big global forces that are changing things, COVID and other. People are like, you know what, I might have 2 or 3 vendors lined up and geographically diverse so that acts of God or other things or economic changes don't totally disrupt my business. So I'll keep my options open. One thing I know, you know, the world is changing and it's going to keep changing. So the best risk management policy is to have a diversity of options available to you. Even if some of those options aren't absolutely perfect, it's worth having some options. So if something bad happens, you're not completely in a bad way. So a risk abatement through multiple options. I think we're hearing a lot. Certainly within the construction business, there's a lot of that now. People saying, well, like, make sure I've got different countries to go to, because we're all like, oh no, quick, no China, we can't. We'll have to go and talk to Malaysia, and we'll get Malaysia contracts signed up. And never, no, wait, Malaysia can't give us our stuff, but China can. And so there's a lot of toing and froing. But some more diverse options up front might help us weather that kind of disruption should we see it again for whatever reason.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for that, Steve. Adam, thanks for your question. I think there's one coming in to say that, hey, or was it Colin? Sorry, it's Colin, I think. And he says, look, now we all know that, you know, there's a need for safe distancing and therefore bigger space requirements, right? Now, his question is, how do you merge or help out with that divide between costs and the need for space in the design of a building, for example? Especially when you design a building, you have things around, you know, energy management and stuff like that. So I think he wants to have some ideas from anyone, you know, around that.
So maybe I jump in here. So we in Johnson Controls, we spend a lot of time thinking about, like how I described earlier, that intersection point of data, right? And if you kind of really think about the whole spatial intelligence and building intelligence or building technology thing, you are now collecting data. So we are partnering with Steel, for example, which is like Herman Miller, you know, where we partner with Steelcase to look at IoT on furniture and on the design of the spaces and how that design impact the way people collaborate, people coming together. Number one, and then number two, we are also partnering with the university to look at things like Apple Watch, Fitbit watches, and how do we get data from that personal devices, connected devices that every individual has, and how does this data come into that building technology? And then looking at microclimate, right? Looking at indoor air quality and what does that mean, right? And so looking at not just data coming from design and furniture, data coming from individuals within mobility intelligence, that triangulates the whole concept of not just space utilization, but more importantly, giving you good ideas and good visibility into space, giving you good ideas into space distancing and understanding, you know, what it takes to make sure that people are not congregating, right, in that environment. And then we use Bluetooth technology as well. So there is a lot of technology in the market today, but I think the accuracy within the built environment has been a big question. So Bluetooth has been one of those technology that's a lot more accurate, to a certain extent, wireless as well. At the GPS level, you know, you can't get it to that granularity, right?
Thanks for that, Alvin. Okay, now I'm going to bring you guys down to a very micro.
DJ Dupree heard you compare Steelcase with Herman Miller. He'd turn in his grave, my friend. You better be careful there.
I'm going to take you guys to a very micro specific situation, and I think that has actually created quite a bit of a devastation. Just yesterday, we all know, you know, ammonium nitrate storage in the building, big bomb, I mean, not bomb blast, but a big explosion, if I may call it that way, 135 people killed. Now, the question then becomes, from a risk mitigation standpoint, how would you use IoT solutions to, in a way, prevent or even, you know, anticipate and you know, remove that risk or prevent that from happening?
Yeah, look, you always have a balance between IoT and people, right? So people are always in the mix. While we have people in the mix, we always have the issues. But no, that specific, if you read the information around that, there was a lot of red flags, a lot of red markers around that. And who knows where the blame lies, but IoT can do a lot of stuff for us. From a security point, there's a plethora of different sensors and things we can use to actually prevent a lot of those type of things. But if we don't get people to act on that at the end of the day, it doesn't help.
If I can be just taking out the human factor, and I apologize for being sort of the cold one here, but 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate is a lost revenue opportunity. I mean, those are nutrients that could have been producing whatever agricultural products for many, many people across the globe. So the fact that inventory was sitting there, they said for like 6 or 7 years, it's a complete waste of resources. And that embodied energy that's in that ammonium nitrate, that's what makes it so hot. I mean, it is a very valuable, important nutrition input into the agricultural food stream. So that to me, it's just a complete waste and a horrible tragedy. And again, I apologize for making it so cold. It's like a lost revenue opportunity, but come on, man, 2,700 tons, that's like 3,000 pallets of ammonium nitrate just sitting there doing nothing for nobody.
So once again, the supply chain, right? It's the question where that started and where it should have been.
RFID tagging, with a Bluetooth enabled system or whatever, and that could have been revenued and never killed a single person.
Now, just one more question from Adam, and his question is around the fact, how do you derive that ROI from the investment in IoT? Because a lot of the time, we all know the payback is north of 5 years. Is there a solution from we want to call it a cash flow management perspective, or even just a pure ROI? Because some people don't have that upfront cash to pump into, that investment, especially in this day and age. Anyone to share on that?
Very good question. I'll jump in there. Alvin's got a lot of information on that as well. But I think that the key there is, and I think this is something we've been working on for the last, I would say, 2-3 years, is really starting to strengthen the case around what is the real reason why you would transform and do basically a digital transformation. And we hear a lot about cost savings and efficiency and effectiveness and those type of things. We're working on a project in India where we, through doing a full integrated, let's say, OT, IT integration, and then we can save about $20 million a year within this precinct, which is significant. But if you then integrate the OM and FM side of that, linking with the community, we can generate net new revenue around about $200 million a year. So that then starts changing the whole discussion around why would you do this? Because it starts creating new revenue, which then influences the real estate value. And that changes the whole ballgame.
I want to say that's why it's important for us to try to target the C-level, because they are the ones who are willing to take risks and invest in things, even if it's not completely black and white, how it's going to benefit them.
Yeah, oh, sorry, Zach. So much of this is, there's so many intangible benefits, right? Often with these things, and a lot of the use case, certainly in commercial buildings where I live, they're intangible, and that's why you need, often executive level assessment to say, look, a lot of these things don't have necessary ROIs, but people who really understand their business say, this would help us with smart decision making, especially in times of change. And so therefore it's important, and therefore I'm going to do it. I think what's also we find really exciting about IoT is people, these multi-sensor bundles that come out now. So you might say, well, I'm putting in these sensors in all my lights because they're going to tell me about occupancy and utilization. But hey, for nothing more, it's also telling me about noise levels. It's telling me about illumination. It's telling me about temperature. And running that through an analytics engine, I might learn all sorts of insights that I might not otherwise have known. So you're kind of gathering data, and there's learning opportunities that come out of that. And so, I mean, there's a whole lot of people now who never intended to worry about social distancing when they put people counting in rooms. They were thinking about meeting room efficiency utilization, but now they have that benefit of being able to set limits on how many people. So I think there's a bit of an investment in data for things that you know you need and things which you might not know that you need, but it's it's risk management by gathering as much data and running it through analytics engines in order to get insights for the future.
Okay, now on the topic of data, I can't help but expect someone with that question, and finally it came out. Thanks, Daniel. How do you manage that from a cyber risk perspective? Especially the latest being my Garmin watch. The entire Garmin company, you know, was under malware and they had to pay that ransom thingy, and my watch just couldn't sync. What's the latest case? So anyone to share on that?
Well, I think it's about projects having the appropriate experts and specialists. It's a very complex space. I think there's a lot of people who understand these things superficially, and the number of people who really understand cybersecurity at the highest level are limited. And I think we all need to ask ourselves in our projects, like, who on our team is fielding this, and do we need to bring in an expert or a specialist to advise us to de-risk it? It's certainly an approach that we take. You need to know. You need to understand your capability, and maybe having these people in here, you'll need them, or maybe it's insurance. We all buy insurance. I think cybersecurity experts deliver a lot, but they also give you some insurance against the worst happening. The chance of my house burning down, hopefully, is small, but I still buy insurance because it would be catastrophic. It happened. Cybersecurity intrusion could be catastrophic, so you should invest it and buy insurance no matter what, because you can't let that happen.
Absolutely.
So the new, I guess, the new focus as well when it comes to security, and I speak more around that whole built environment space, is how security is converging, right? So cyber and physical, right? And I think that's becoming more and more critical in terms of how do we see that two aspect of it converging. So that's number one, because in a cyberspace, there are tons of what I call OT cyber that we can put, whether be it in a building or be it in critical infrastructure, right? But I think what's interesting is how do you bring both of them together is what's interesting. And then I think the other big area, especially, as we kind of really wanting to mitigate risk, security, orchestration, automation, and response, that's a huge part, right? Managing all the standard operating procedures, standard operating, these are all contributing to managing risk more holistically, rather than kind of look at it at a point perspective. So again, I think the big trend and the big ask here from a lot of my customers are, how do we look at this in a more converged manner, but more interestingly, how do we orchestrate, automate, and respond much quicker?
Yeah, absolutely agree. To Alvin's point, converge, it's that converged roadmap that sets out the whole plan, that covers all those areas. You have to do that.
Okay, now I'm going to switch a little bit now to the point of view of business model changes, right? So Trung, I want to direct this question to you. As a system integrator and solution provider, has your company been in a state where you're thinking about how does that work in terms of, I've got a client that wants this, cannot pay up front, and you're thinking, do we go into a subscription model? Do we go into a rental basis? Things like that. How has that affected your company's business model?
Thanks for the question. Actually, yes, we do face that that challenge quite often, especially during this time, where everyone looking at increasing efficiency and want more business transparency, but doesn't have much capital to invest. So we actually quite flexible in our business model to adapt to that. Sometimes it just mean come back to ROI. Maybe we do a pilot project for them to prove the value, and also I think a lot of time it's come back to address the concern of they say, okay, I go to the seminar, I go to the website, I go do some research, and I think the cost is really high. And how we can help? How you're gonna help me to achieve this? Can we pay later and things like that? But at the end of the day, you come back and you say, okay, so what really is your problem? And sometimes this could be a quick fix. It could be a small customized solution that can help them to quickly achieve that. I think a very general misunderstanding in the market, at least from my experience, is that everyone talk about IoT, install new stuff. You have to install new infrastructure and everything, but very often we come back and we look at their place and we talk about data. They normally have 50, 60, or not even, I mean, in Singapore market, most of the players already have 80% of data available. They just don't know how to use it. And so that come back to the investment. It doesn't need a big investment. It's actually just, you know, how you're gonna be using your existing data to solve your problem right now. And also how about data integration. And those could be a quick fix and it doesn't really incur a lot of costs. I think that is the general misunderstanding. Everyone thinks that require a lot of investment, but actually it might not depend on what the problem you have.
Now, could you give the audience a sense of what that ballpark number looks like, or range? Because in a lot of people's mind, it's like, wow, I'm going to spend a couple of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Is it the case, or you're looking at something in the couple of $1,000s? And that's one question. Second question is the time frame of that implementation. And that's always that, you know, hidden thing in the back that, oh, it's going to take another 1 year or something to implement. Is that really the case? Could you all give some light on some?
Yeah, so it could be, it could not. So I give an example as we have a client come back and say, okay, with all the requirement from the government, I want to reopen, and we need, you know, track and trace for crowd control and everything. And they're thinking about a couple $100,000 of investment, because they think about install really expensive heat tracing and stuff like that. But so what we come back and we propose solution and end up only cost them around $20,000 to write a custom software to link all the data they have. Let's say instead of using all these new IoT sensor based on the amount of data you already have. For example, you can combine data from, you know, let's talk about crowd control. You can do people normally have the Wi-Fi in the office, for example. Even tapping the data from how many people is connected to your Wi-Fi and how many people passing the door, how many times the door open. You can have a really accurate estimation of how many people was in a certain area to help you with crowd control, social distancing, but also with, you know, energy efficiency, adjust up and down the temperature in that room based on number of people. So for that particular client, we're able to do a really automated temperature scanning and occupancy counting within $10,000 to $20,000 investment without any new instrument. And that also helped to cut short the investment time, because if you talk about instrument, you need to buy a new one, you need to wait for it to arrive, you know, install it and things like that. It could take a couple months, but a quick solution could turn around like 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. Very interesting. Just wanted the audience to get a sense of that.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Theo. I'm actually going to open up to all of you.
But to your point, I think we have to get comfortable that we will see a tremendous shift in business models with this, right? So Itachi, so what we heard C-levels once can tell us is saying, don't sell me a solution, help me transform. Come, and we launched a program called co-creation, right? So where we can then co-create with this client through a process of transformation. And you'll hear a lot about future-proofing and those type of statements coming out, saying that, you know, technology is moving so fast. How do I stay smart? How do I stay connected? And how do I generate these new revenue streams? So I think we have to get more comfortable with that. We have to adjust how we engage these clients and how we then long term and our revenue and profit models going to flow from that. I think it's just key. We have to do that.
Okay. Anyone else to add to this from the point of view of business models and some specifics that maybe yourself or your clients have put in place that weren't around if not for the situation?
Yeah, I mean, the best business model is the one where you're selling savings, right? So, I mean, the ability to go into a customer and find a way to baseline. Again, it takes leadership and intelligence on the part of the buyer. But, you know, from a real estate perspective, you know, there are many tenant representative brokers who are like, well, I renegotiate your lease for 5 years. I save you 15%. I take 10% of that savings over the next 5 years. So it's a shared savings model. So again, if you're financially strong, like many of the companies that are on this call, not myself, they can finance these investments, because if you believe in it, you can finance it. Yeah. And I mean, you guys have stuff that you know would work for your customers, and I know you could be like, well, okay, well, we'll outlay the capital, but we need an agreement that you're going to pay for the savings that we're going to deliver, that I know we will deliver. And I think that's just a beautiful model, but it takes a mature market to be receptive to that model. And I just don't think we're there yet in Southeast Asia, certainly not in Singapore yet.
Yeah, actually, I would like to add what Zach is saying. I think this is disruption, and business model disruption enhances only happen when you have the ability to actually collect data, and the data needs to be clean. And once you have that data, it becomes moving from product to as a service model. What Yo said earlier, consumption economy, right? As a service model. And I think this is kind of where the aha moment is coming, because a lot of customers are beginning to realize that in a value chain or in a supply chain, especially for the real estate industry, there's this whole thing that we call the digital thread that cuts across from that design, the construct, and the operate phase. And that digital thread needs to happen. And I think there are a lot of technology out there that's going to start enabling that ability to create that digital thread. And when that happens, I think those business model and those disruptions are going to start happening.
Yeah, agreed.
Very good. Thank you. Now, there's something which is a bit more, I call it industry specific now, yeah? So one question came up around the fact that, given the fact that we know that the healthcare system is going to be a bit more stretched nowadays and in the foreseeable future, any thoughts around smart hospitals and smart healthcare facilities that will help to, in a way, you want to call it, address that burden?
Certainly a very topical conversation. There's lots of government agencies having these conversations. In fact, sorry, to be fair, they've been having these conversations for some time around these use cases. I would say the one most prevalent one that you hear that seems to make the most sense is around asset tracking. Sorry, excuse me, and people tracking. Being able to know in each storeroom how many IV pump stations you have and where they are, and knowing exactly how much stock you have in each of the dispensing machines that people don't go down to the main pharmacy in order to get a few pills. The nurses just go to a dispensing machine, and keeping track of all those levels. And so managing your assets, and because staff are so stretched, you don't want nurses and doctors doing trips they don't need to have. You don't want to be mucking around saying, well, where do I find this piece of equipment? Do we have any? Maybe I need to buy more than I need because I can't work out where they all are within the site. So we see predominantly a lot of those conversations around, let's do asset track, let's put tags on things, let's track people and assets, and let's make sure we can use those assets as efficiently as possible. And more importantly, use our limited healthcare experts' time as efficiently as possible by helping them get hold of those assets.
So where do you actually see that happening, Steve? Because that's the holy grail that we've been selling for 6 years. And when we say it's $4 a square foot, it's the same cost as commercial carpet. And they turn it down because they're unwilling to invest $4 per square foot for that tracking capability. So where do you find a customer who's willing to invest in that?
Yeah, so at the moment, a lot of it is, is studies and reviews, and we don't currently have a client who's pulled the trigger on that. But certainly from talking to some of the bigger multinationals, I see a lot of European hospitals that have gone that and executed projects with asset tracking and using IoT systems to maximize their utilization. I know a number of hospitals in France and then in the Netherlands that have used those types of systems. Here, mainly we're doing studies at the moment, but people seem, probably more than ever before, maybe I'm being overly optimistic, Zach, that perhaps now, as people get more and more stretched, they value that a little more. But I can't tell you of a project that we've personally executed.
Away from physical property, what is really come about is telehealth. So telemedicine. So we're busy with a very large project across APAC where that has accelerated tremendously. In one of the regions is India as well, right? So where suddenly, if you are sick and it's not COVID related, what do you do? So that will grow tremendously is the whole telehealth or telemedicine arena.
No, I think very interesting, Theo, you mentioned that. And the latest actually had been the recent merger of two telehealth startups, Teledoc and Levongo.
Yep.
And the stock price just went through the roof when obviously Trump says, you know what, we're going to make sure we do something to accelerate that progress. That's just as an example, just to your point, Theo. Huh?
But even in that case, right, we are making a case. So you have institutional telemedicine happening, but then we also have private doctors saying, you know, I have 2 hands, 8 hours a day, I can see that many patients, so I can extend and add new revenue to my business by incorporating that. So it's once again that it's a changing landscape for all of them.
Amazing. And Trung, just now I saw you wanted to say something, you unmuted, and then would you like to share your thoughts on this topic we're talking about around the whole healthcare industry?
Yeah, actually, I echo Theo opinion, because that's what I want to say is, aside from increased efficiency of the physical hospital, I think there's another whole new aspect of telehealth consultation, remote monitoring, basically utilize and optimize the resource anywhere in the world to help with fighting the pandemic, but also transform the healthcare industry. You know, like a recent startup I work with, Dr. Anywhere, they provided the same thing when people don't have to visit the hospital or even a clinic, and they just make an appointment, and over the Zoom, the doctor can give them a quick consultant and advice and see what's the situation and come back. So I think that is another aspect of how a specific IoT application can help.
Absolutely. And extending quality care into remote areas, right? So we're now running these cases that go into remote areas in India, where a village has this with all the monitoring coming in one case. So you can now have quality assessment, you know, in the village, where traditionally they have to travel a long way to get there.
Yeah. And another aspect is that from my background, automation, like application for robot assistant right now also has been widely adopted. I think is not until COVID-19 that people realize that the robot assistant can help do a lot of the process inside hospital, like disinfection, cleaning hospital, perform medicine delivery and stuff like that. Before, it's all in the pilot, but COVID did accelerate the trend, and I see a lot of adoption right now in the healthcare industry.
Trump, that is very, very, I think hotels will move down that same line, because at the end of the day, with COVID, trust is key, right? How do I know that this hotel room is not just clean, but sanitized? So I see that autonomous, you know, cleansing systems going into hotels.
Yeah.
Same reason.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, as y'all were talking about it, it just draws me into another area. And this time I want to talk a bit about how the challenges are in a developing market for some of the things that we're talking about. You know, because a lot of times when we do a lot of this stuff, it seems that it's always a developed market kind of solution. You know, the developing market can't do it. And I want to use a specific example, but see if you can add richness to it, right? I think of the fire protection system, a very simple smoke detector. And once that, you know, detects smoke or temperature difference, you know, the spray comes on. But when I looked at that, my question was, that existed maybe 20 years ago, but that gives an idea of what the entire, you want to use the word IoT, Industry 4.0, whatever funky names you put, you know, on top of that basic principle, right? Has already been around, right? Which basically is you send something that gets into an intelligent brain that says, if it's more than this, do spray the water. If it's less than this temperature, don't spray the water. Just a very simple principle. I wanted you to expound a little bit on that for the intents and purposes of implementation in the developing market, because people will think, wow, it's some sophisticated, complicated thing. Anybody want to share on that?
Just quickly, before probably more intelligent people than me can speak to this, but like JCI, Hitachi, I mean, Trungha with Rovis, they've been doing IoT for 20 years. This is nothing new. I mean, they've been doing connected devices, machines, equipment, and tracking it for years and years and years. So it's kind of like a frustrating enterprise to go to an IoT conference and it's like, this is just the same stuff rebranded. It's like cloud computing. Yeah, it's called the internet. It's not anything too new. So I think, you know, you have like the IoT experts of the world, because Hitachi and Johnson Controls, I mean, for the first job I worked on 17 years ago, Johnson Controls was doing the BMS system. That was an IoT system because it was running over the net. It's just like, come on, guys, it's nothing new. So to your point, yes, it's not new. It's just the investing in you know, understanding what you need to know and investing in it. And maybe the layer that's getting added is perhaps less hardwired infrastructure, perhaps more data collection. But goodness sakes, I mean, Johnson and Hitachi, and I mean, Steve's probably been specking out BMSs since he was in short pants. So, I mean, it's nothing new.
To Zach's point, absolutely. But I think the key becomes now is the connected community, and now the monetization that flows from that. So for the first time now, we can start seeing net new revenue from this digital ecosystem that we're creating, and that's making so we're seeing a mindset shift in the property industry, where people are saying, where we had developers saying, I'm building a building, it's a physical ecosystem, and my margin is selling it for a profit margin and walking away, going to the next one, right? Now they're starting saying, I'm going to build this thing, but because I can create a platform business and I run a platform business model from this ecosystem, or this precinct ecosystem, suddenly this thing can keep on making money for the next 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Now it changes that mindset and the way that they actually go into this, and that's changing. And once that's changing, that can change your entire focus on why you would implement it and integrate your IoT.
Okay. No, thank you.
So I love what Zach said, right? I think, back to your point, Glenn, for emerging countries, firstly, the cost of technology is coming down, the cost of sensors are coming down.
Yeah.
So I think that all of us need to kind of appreciate that there's a huge difference 20 years ago versus now. Cost of technology has come down significantly. But I think the world of emerging markets have begun to realize the power of data through their daily activity of a mobile phone. And I think people are now correlating their daily life at a consumer level, and say, even at an enterprise level and at a work level, what do I need to do new and different? And they are beginning to say, hey, you know what? Data is becoming important. If I want to put in IoT, this is going to bring me some value. Let's quickly define some of the low-hanging fruit use case so that we can get on with the value creation that we need, right? So I think the acceleration for the emerging market has happened. I mean, look at India, right? I mean, they skip the entire infrastructure and went straight to the mobile phone and connect the world. So my humble opinion, this is going to happen, that the realization of data and realization of that value is going to force feed a forcing function of some of these emerging companies to start deploying and implementing and go after those low-hanging fruit value.
No, I think thanks for that, Alvin. And then just for the audience, the reason why I thought this question would help out is there's always this, what I call, big monster out there that's called Industry 4.0 or something. And I think just wanted you to hear from the practitioners that it's not that big a monster, right? It's been around 20 years. It's in fact a lot more affordable now. And you know what? The good news with developing markets is you can leapfrog. You start from zero, you go to hero. The rest of us are just struggling with legacy systems and a huge resistance to change mindset, or fear of failure mindset, whatever you want to call it, right? So just wanted to make sure that comes out front and center from what your panelists of 5 of them have spoken, so that at least you can take that with you. I just wanted to be sensitive to time. I know it's about 11:09, another minute to go before 11:10. Jane and company, how do you want to take this moving forward? Do you want to continue, or you want to transition over to the breakout sessions?
I think there's quite a number of questions that we could probably give more time to when we get into interchange. Sure. Yeah, so like you're saying that in the interest of time, I think we should move on. because we can, it'll be still the same guys among you guys, but we'll split across the two breakout sessions. So in a sense, the conversation can still continue, okay?
Okay.
Would it be all right for everybody?
No problem.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so thank you again, Glenn, and the panelists for this very wide-ranging discussion. It's way wider than I thought it would be. And also for tackling some of the audience's questions so gamely. So to move on to the next section, let me bring on now Satvik Rao, Practice Director for Digital Architecture at UST Global, and he's also SIAA Council member. And he'll be sharing with us some of his thoughts by way of a preface to our following breakout discussions with a short presentation. So over to you, Satvik.
Thanks, Jane. Hello, everyone. I want to spend next 10 minutes articulating some of the challenges and priorities that facility owners and operators in the new normal. More importantly, how that impacts their prioritization of the smart estate or smart building initiatives that they're already driving. This session is intended to purely provoke thoughts that would help exchange ideas and point of views in our next breakout session. Let me share a couple of slides that I have. Jane, will you be able to see my?
Yep.
As we all know, for most of the businesses, the standard operating procedures have been changed because of impact of pandemic, right? So this is not different for facility operations. Maybe it is more significant for facility operations or estate operations with respect to promotion of hygiene, health, and safety. So you can see some of the examples. One of the important aspect of this changes is this uniform across small players, big players, and medium players. For everyone, it is the same impact. They have to change their operating procedures. So you can see the examples where Jeff Bezos is getting temperature scanned before entering into his own distribution center. And similarly, a restaurant where employees are, or a cafeteria where employees are shielded by a glass separation. Likewise, there is a lift or an elevator where there is the safe distancing boxes that are drawn. So this is what we see in a day-to-day basis and very much related to the facility operations. So what are the priorities that have been changed? Why that has changed? And how across the value chain, what is its impact? So I try to articulate that here. The value chain for a estate operator or estate owner, it is a wide variety of things that exist in a value chain. However, I try to summarize it from an end-to-end perspective. It is acquisition of land for a greenfield project, acquisition of land, plan and design, construction, then marketing, handover, and maintain and operate. However, in today's agenda, we try to focus more on maintain and operate, which includes greenfield and brownfield projects. So what are some of the new priorities? So though there are many other priorities in plan and design, construction phases are there, I will focus on a few of them that is relevant to today's agenda. So safety, health, and wellness to remain the top priority. So everything else is next. So this is not just for next 2 to 3 months. As you see, the economy is open up. I think this is going to stay for another 1 to 2 years. So whatever I'm trying to highlight here are for the midterm to long-term kind of priorities. Optimizing the cost to match reduction in operating income. So previously, whenever we go and pitch a solution to a operator or a real estate owner or estate owners, it is all about optimizing cost in longer run, 10 years down the line. Your ROI is break even in 2 years, 3 years. But this whole timeline has compressed now. There's a need for optimizing the cost today because there is a sudden reduction in operating income. So that is the change we see. As panelists alluded, the data and insight mastery is not an option now. So I think every business is trying to get maximum out of the data, be it for new net revenue models or for its cost optimization. So another thing, I'm not a big fan of buzzwords, but this is something is really interesting and emerging: low touch and touchless engagements. So you will see all the way from hospitals, airlines, restaurants, everywhere this pattern is evolving. There's a whole research done around low touch economy. Those who are interested can go and search about it. There are multiple use cases cutting across different verticals have been articulated in those research. So another big change or priority is the changing protocols and workspace design. So airflow management is one of them. If you heard news, Singapore also will be implementing regulations around airflow and ventilation within the buildings. This will not just change the airflow management, but also generate opportunities for monitoring and IoT use cases. Similarly, enforcing safe distancing requirements, helping tenants to return to work. We as a company have helped a couple of retail operators, those who have large retail operations, including real estate, to help their workers to return to work with new solutions. So I'll cover some of the solutions part of it later, but I'm trying to highlight the priorities here. Another big challenge is managing the cost across different estates and buildings. So the revenue generation is not same across all the buildings like previously, right? It was balanced. So for example, those who are in Singapore, then if you go to a neighborhood mall, there are a lot of traffic. But similarly, if you go to a tourism kind of spot like Orchard Road, those malls are struggling. So how do you balance your disproportionate revenue versus your cost of keeping the lights on? So that is another key priorities that the companies are looking at. And so there is a big boom of sharing economy, be it sharing workplaces, being sharing vehicles. So that has taken a setback due to this pandemic, if you see. So what are the new revenue models? That it was to that an extent that not just companies like WeWork, but the real estate companies or the property owners or operators are also investing in startups that are doing co-working space. So how that will sustain, and are there any alternative revenue models that are required? So we need to think about those priorities as well as we get into the solutioning part of it. So about data platforms. So there has been discussions. We had several conversations with multiple operators about having a data platform. I think some of our panelists alluded to having a digital thread all the way across the value chain. Similarly, once you get into the build and operate itself, there is a plenty of data that gets generated. So how will you build a thread among all these different domains? So currently there are systems, there are BMS, there are sensors that are deployed already, especially the buildings that are constructed 10, 15 years ago. You will see a lot of data points available. But what they do, they operate in individual domains. So I have demarked them into 6 different domains. So water management, energy management, security, safety and sustainability, space management and experience, waste management, and maintenance management. So individual systems, there are already some smartness in each of these domains. But where there is new opportunity to bring a platform ecosystem, which I call as a glue at the center, is to bring data from different domains and create use cases that correlates from one domain to another domain and generate new insights that can help optimize the operations. That will help in getting the value quickly, as well as expedite your time to value. And it is an incremental value. Let's say you might have already achieved 85%, 90% of efficiency in your building. So the last 5% or 2 to 3%, which is significant, can be achieved by having cross-domain correlation of data. So that is something we all have to think as we get into the solutioning or next breakout sessions. Are there any use cases that we think of such use cases? So you can depend, one of the biggest data sources itself is a BMS, where there are thousands of data points for a medium-sized estate, real estate property. So that could be your good starting point. So there are new solutions that are emerging. You will see a lot of them, and there are existing solutions that are getting traction. So the new solutions are maybe completely derived out of the current situations, which are to address the near-term to medium-term requirements. But there are solutions like optimized, for example, optimized maintenance and repair using fault detection and diagnosis, FDD, which is basically leveraging your existing BMS data to optimize your maintenance and repair of your chiller plants or the equipments that you have in your building. So these will get traction because there is a real reason for that to be done now. There's a compulsion of cost reduction as well as the tenant experience, the balance between the two. And centralized facility operation centers and facility management teams. This has been in the discussion for quite a long time, but now there is a real need because you have to centralize your operations. So everything is remote. So, and you have to share your teams that you have. Needless to say, touchless check-ins, visitor registration, voice assistants, these will continue to be there for a few more years or maybe for a longer term. Similarly, as I mentioned before, airflow ventilations and indoor environment monitoring. Previously, these were all POCs, pilots. Now there is a real need to do that because you have a new set of regulations as well as set of requirements around your indoor environment or a built environment. So another one is the video analytics. So video analytics has been there. Some of the companies have already implemented. But there's new use cases emerging for safe distancing and tracking of people and enforcement. And sustainability is still continue to be one of the top agenda. So AI-based energy and water consumption optimization will also be an important solution to think about. So as I mentioned, so new revenue models, how do you monetize your consumer data and that data that is generated from your IoT devices within a building? So I think that will be an interesting proposition for the building owners as they are losing some of their traditional revenue streams. Definitely they'll be looking for new non-traditional monetization models. These are all some of the solutions I wanted to put together and show so that it triggers some thoughts for our subsequent discussions in breakout sessions. So I will pause here if there is any question from the panel or from the audience.